that the student is bringing something to the table. They're not just going to the faculty advisor and sucking the life's blood out of the faculty advisor, but instead they're bringing something to the advisor. The advisor in turn also brings something, and the joint product is better than either of the other approaches would have allowed. So I think what that means when you're selecting a student or the student selecting an advisor is that both of you have to have your own interest, and you have to have your own sense of intellectual curiosity or pick out something that matters to you. And then you have to be broad enough to be willing to see different perspectives and views on that particular subject. And to the extent that both of you can operate in that mode, then I think the best dissertations result, because they then will produce maybe a more surprising approach or a more surprising set of findings. And that's ultimately, you know, at the end of the whole process, you're looking for some job, somebody to hire you. And what people are most impressed with is some way of thinking about a problem they hadn't thought about before, something where they feel it's something more than just an incremental incremental gain on somebody else's work. So that's a harder way to do because it means more negotiation on everybody's part, but I think it probably results in a better product.
Thanks, Carol. Well, my name is Judy Zaichkowsky, and I think I'm better known for a person who did some measurement work, specifically on involvement. And how I got there is really started some over 30 years ago, and this was very closely linked to Hal Kasarjan here. But I want to say that when I was an undergraduate at UBC, the UBC bookstore was having a sale. And I picked up this book for about $2.34, and it was written by Hal Kasarjan and Tom Robertson, and it was called Perspectives in Consumer Behavior. And I used to read it at bedtime, and I thought, this is really cool stuff. So over the next few years, I went back, graduated, and I had, during that time, gone over to the marketing department and taken some courses, and there I found that marketing was a whole hell of a lot easier than what I was studying, which was home economics, which included organic chemistry and microeconomics and some other nutritional and biochemistry type courses. So, and I thought marketing was far more interesting. So then I got another degree in consumer studies, and after that I went to work here for John Claxton, who's sitting in the audience here, and I worked on a lot of research projects with John. And then I decided it was time I should get a dental plan, and I needed some permanent kind of employment, and the university looked like a great place to go. So I was looking for a Ph.D. program, and everybody I talked to thought I should go where they graduated. So I looked around, and because I had been working with John, he had a large stream of research, and we all went off to a conference in Florida, in Miami Beach, if you remember the conference at the decrepit Doral Hotel of Miami Beach. And there I went to see a session, and Hal was chairing it. And after the speakers, well, I listened to the talk, and knowing something about research, I didn't think these papers were very good, and I thought they were quite simple. And Hal stood up and said, "These are the 3 most mediocre papers I'd ever heard in my whole life." And I thought, I know this guy. This guy's good. He's my kind of guy. So I went and talked to Hal, and Hal introduced me to his colleagues, which were Jim Bettman and Rich Lutz at the time. And also at this conference, there was a side trip to the Miami Dolphins football game. And people said if anybody was going to the football game, it would be the people from UCLA, so I should talk to Jim and Rich. So I thought, these are really my kind of people. So I asked if they had a doctoral program. And they said, oh yeah, we have a doctoral program. Because nobody ever suggested that I would go to UCLA. So I talked to them, and they said, have you written your GMATs? And I said, no. They said, well, you have to write this and you have to apply. And so I wrote my GMATs and I applied, but I guess they remembered me and they liked me because they let me in despite of my GMAT score. And anyway, that's how I got to UCLA. And then Hal wasn't there. He was off for 2 years, and there I met Jim Bettman and Rich Lutz and Mike Hansens and Bart Weitz and Carol Scott, and just had, I would say, a gaggle of wonderful fellow doctoral students. And everything was just absolutely super. I couldn't believe life would be so good, living in Santa Monica and interacting every day with such smart people. And then all of a sudden one day, half the faculty decided to leave for one reason or another. And one year we lost 5 marketing faculty, and that was about the time I needed an advisor. So I started sort of testing everybody out, and really kind of set a lot of fires and burned a lot of bridges. I think I tried to work with Carol, and Carol's quite an experimentalist and was always talking to me about 2 by 2 designs. And I couldn't get past the first 2 by 2. And it was really quite a difficult relationship because Carol was very much complicated, in my view, complicated thinker, and we just really didn't really, she tried very hard with me, and it just didn't work. And then I think I also tried with Deborah Roterjohn, and Deborah was very, very patient and spent months trying to analyze what I was interested in and how I do this and how I do that, and that wasn't working either. And I was in a really bad state. And then Hal came back on the scenes after being away, and I think he turned me around and kicked me in the rear end and said, look, get going. He said, if you really want to do a dissertation, you do it on this. You figure out how to measure involvement. And I thought, oh, okay. Because I had been to an ACR special session on involvement, and all these people were sitting around in a room talking about this esoteric fairy thing, you know, and I mean, I thought marketing was far more about pricing and something more concrete that you could actually learn to make a profit on. So if I wanted my degree, I knew I had to do this dissertation or I wasn't going to graduate, virtually, because I needed an advisor. So that's how I got working on involvement. And then Hal and I had a very good working relationship because he'd tell me I was stubborn, and I'd say, no, I'm not stubborn, I'm just strong-willed. You're the stubborn one. So we could just speak very freely to each other and yell quite a bit. And you'd hear these things coming out of his office, and I'd say, no, I'm not doing that. And he'd say, well, I really think you should. And then I'd go away, and sometimes we'd agree, sometimes we'd disagree. But what we really had was a lot of fun doing this. And you know, I remember going into his office one day saying how I was going to do this dissertation, and he had all these ideas for me, and I'd say, no, I can't do that because of this. And he'd say, well, why don't you do these little vignettes like it was on a measurement? And I said, no, that's not going to work. And so finally one day I went into his office, and he was editor of the Journal of Consumer Research, and he had his feet in his desk and his hands behind his head like this, and he's like, okay, let's hear it. So I told him, and he said, jumped up, and he said, you've got it, you're going to be famous. And I thought, this guy's nuts. But I went off, and I did all this data collection, and it seems to have turned out all right. So that's how you get a dissertation done, is you really find an advisor that you can argue with well, and then do whatever he says, more or less, or she says.
If you're stubborn enough.
So that's how it all worked out. Hopefully you've enjoyed this presentation from Hal and Carol, and also enjoyed my dissertation story. The road of a doctoral student varies from stressful to a lot of fun. This will change from time to time and from year to year, as the process is usually 3 to 4 and sometimes 5 years. I wish you all the best in your doctoral dissertation.